think it's impressive that the president put our colors up there for the world to see. And if the UN or the Korean government wants to give money to a school that proclaims Jesus Christ, well, that's just great. The day when we become like Harvard, when we take lots of state money and abandon Christ, well, that'll be the end of us. Not the day when we take lots of money from the state.
You know, I'll play on that, which is to say that it does create that problem. It does create tremendous tensions because, of course, we do have to fill out forms, and not necessarily lying, but we have to fill out forms, and it takes up time that, for example, I'd much rather spend prepping and talking about John Calvin's book 4, chapter 20. I'd much rather read that and have my students do a close read of that than spend time writing up forms. Of course. But there are instrumental needs that have to be accomplished. Now, the other thing I would like to say that does push back a bit on this is that I think what the danger, there is a danger in actually taking state money, and that is that you fail to make your case to the population that needs you, and that should be spending money to support you, and should be holding you accountable to being faithful to the gospel. So what ends up doing often practically is you take easy money, it takes forms, starts to divert your attention, and what you should be doing is going out and talking about why being a Christian makes a difference in the kind of lawyering you're doing. From that's done differently from an LPU, a large pagan university. Right? So you should be going out to the churches and saying, don't send your kids to LPUs, send them to Handong. Right? With the argument that arguably one of the greatest contemporary philosophers, is a Christian named Lantinga, not quite the same as mine. There's a P in front of it. Lantinga, right? He went to one of those great Ivy Leagues and said, Yale, I think it was Yale. Was it Yale, Harvard, or Princeton? I've forgotten which one. But he went there for his first year of undergraduate. And he said, this is stupid. This is sub-quality. And he went back to a place like Handong in the United States, Calvin College, and said, this is real education. To which I say to you all, if you're interested in what Jesus Christ is calling you to do in the world, whatever profession is, there's almost no better institution in the whole world than this one. There is no better place. You cannot get this kind of education anywhere. You go to Korea. Well, what do you go to Korea for? What do you go to Seoul for? What are you going for? Prestige? For more power? Well, you're already giving up the game. You're playing by somebody else's purposes. But if you're going to study with professors that take the word of Jesus and say, listen to it as it percolates in your discipline of psychology, right? Or political, then you can't do any better than this place. Not in Korea that I know of. Then that's why you're here. To actually go to Seoul National instead of this would be a step down. Don't just take my word for it. Take Al Plantinga's word for it. He's one of the greatest philosophers recognized around the world as one of the greatest philosophical minds. There's actually a book that's called From Plato to Plantinga. All right? That's how important this guy is, right? He is a heavy-duty, unapologetically Christian philosopher, period. Right? Yeah, if he can say it, I think that comes some weight with it. Not the weight of Jesus. But that's pretty serious. He's a pretty smart guy. Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. And that's why Aaron Kuyper has started Free University Amsterdam, free from the intervention of the state and the church. Okay. Good questions, Jason. Another question, comments?
I have a question for Professor Schultz.
Okay, you can do that.
That's fair enough.
What do you think? That's the question. You can interpret it any way you want.
What do you think?
I'm waiting for breakfast.
Come forward if you want.
No. I think that would be a very short response.
It's all good. You're sleepy?
First, my concern was just who are we talking about when we talk about Christian higher education is growing? You know, what types of schools, universities, colleges, institutions are we looking at and regarding as, you know, on the rise and growing? So that was my question with respect to definition. I guess I'm more concerned about not just the purpose statement of a university, but more specifically, as you focused in on, is composition of faculty. I think that both composition of faculty and then the scope of the curriculum, the scope of the schools, largely goes to the question of is this both a university first, and then is it Christian? Is it Christian? So that was my first concern, and then it comes down to the question of the connection between Christian higher education and outside sources of funding, outside being outside the Christian community. If it's truly a Christian university, then my thought would be it ought to draw its primary funding, if not exclusively, substantially from the Christian community, in order to be enabled to maintain integrity and remain true to the founding goals and then the ongoing challenges of keeping it. And if you cannot do that without reliance upon external sources of funding that are conditioned, and that's really where my question comes from, because my experience in higher education is when you turn to outside sources of funding, you often, if not always, get specific limitations and conditions upon the use of that funding. And you either have to convince your funding source that you're only using the money for that purpose, which if they're smart enough, they would say, well, then that means other money is freed up to use for your own purposes. Are they trying to control you by that outside? As when you go to that outside source of funding, are you giving up? Are you already losing the battle in a sense? So that's probably where my concern lies deepest.
Can I jump on that? I would also add to the problem I have, and I'm going to push this back to Mr. Enlow perhaps, but it seems to me not clear that the state's taking money from non-Christians should be, as a matter of simple justice, given to Christians, because we happen to have, for example, if we had a monopoly of higher education or a substantial position, it wouldn't seem to me obvious that taking money from general public revenues and reapportioning it to my pocket, though we might like that, would be a just position. And we could flip that around. Certainly in the United States, the vast majority of funding comes from Christian pockets to go to non-Christian pockets. It doesn't seem to be a particularly just position either. So it seems to me there are some significant shortcomings with state funding, period. Sorry, Eric, I'd love to
But
hear
you
your
know,
thoughts.
it's, like when I worked at Regent University in Virginia Beach refused government money for that very reason, so that government would not be able to control curriculum and policy. So America definitely is a place where if we accept government funding, government has a big foot in what we're doing and how we're doing.
Well, and they even make the argument that even if you are a tax-exempt organization, you are in effect receiving a government subsidy. And
I mean, my only point about that was, my own sense is that the university structure is itself a structure of state control and manipulation.
It is, or it has become.
It has become. I mean, perhaps there's a pure notion of the university that isn't, but for the last 300 years, states have used the chartering, the privileging, the structuring of university curriculums as modes of propaganda, of modes of elite promotion and construction for the state purpose. And the only reason for Christians to get in the game is not because we are clearly taught by Christian, the scriptures or by Christian theology,